have several questions. Where can people see this video that's being made of this meeting? I'm so sad with all of you experts up there that we don't have this filled, but I know of people interested who got me to come, and where can they see this video?
Well, we are going to, well, Kim, you have one.
Yeah, you can see it on Impact Media 1 with the number 1, and it'll be linked up through Tanya and through REMIAC, whatever, and probably through the township as well, because we want people to share this information because not everybody shows up to these things.
I don't understand Impact Video 1. Do I go to a website?
You know what? Give me, if you provide your email address, we'll send you out the link.
Wonderful.
Yeah, that's
And then I wonder,
it's a YouTube site.
Here we go.
Why don't you go ahead and do one more on a roll here.
well, how can we get, last year I tried to get a water analysis of our wells. We are over in Selden Beach, and I'm very suspicious of the drinking water. And I tried it through the state or something, and people said no. I said, well, privately, how can I get it done? They gave me the name of the company, and I called, and they said, no, they wouldn't do it. It seemed they wanted to know specific chemicals. Well, people over at Sylvan, some people are spraying 5 different pesticides, herbicides, insecticides, fertilizers, all of these things which I'm guessing is sinking into the groundwater. How can we get a private well tested?
Mike, is that a good question for you?
Pesticides would be like an SOC, a synthetic organic compounds. You'd want to get an SOC, SAM, ostrich, cat.
I'm having a little trouble here.
SOC, you would want to get to order that. Trace Labs in Muskegon will do that. So will Brian and Newhoff in Muskegon. Brian and Newhoff is over by the airport. You take Trace Labs. Yep.
Labs and ask for an SOC.
Yeah, you'd want to do SOCs on that. But I think they send that actually to the state. I think the state lab is the one that actually runs those.
And two, I know that when people ask me those questions, you know, I think the problem with that is they have to do like a big scan because they have to have some idea of what they might want to test for, and then rather than doing kind of a full scale. But maybe two quick follow-up. Is there any test that the county does that would give her an indication that she would do a further test?
No, the county, I work with the county for public health. We don't have a lab, so we farm it out to Trace. Trace is the lab that we go out for bids every 2 years, so Trace is our lab at the moment.
And then we just recently kayaked the old channel, and even at the start of the old channel, which is White Lake too, we always saw so many turtles. This year, not one turtle, and I wondered if toxic algae bloom has killed off all the turtles. We also have an unusual number of vultures flying all over, and I wonder if there's so much death from toxic algae, and that's why we have so many vultures, but not one turtle. See, so many turtles, because we would, that's part of our ritual to kayak to Old Channel Inn.
Aaron, would that be a good question for you?
So animals, if they consume toxic algae, it can kill them. In general, what we've seen is that the only animals that tend to actually purposely consume it are dogs, and then people inadvertently get their hands in it and then put their hands in their mouth. As far as wildlife, they tend to avoid it. So fish, pretty much the only time a fish will consume toxic algae is if they're in a very small pond, and it's throughout the entire water column, so they have to inadvertently consume it. To answer your question, I'm not sure why this year not as many turtles.
You know what, Erin, who in the department could we follow up with, just to see if there's been some general trend? I mean, wildlife.
So there's a gentleman, Nick Cages, he's with the Michigan DNR. He's the local wildlife biologist who covers Muskegon County.
Here it is with what?
Michigan DNR, Department of Natural Resources.
I can get you that information after we're done. So Carlos,
I
are
think
you ready
we're
to go?
Whoops.
Every time I see you, I go back years ago.
There we go. All right, so I'm going to be talking about some of the actions or solutions that Tanya mentioned at the intro here. Quickly, I'll just do a brief introduction of myself, touch on some general concepts of the water cycle and watersheds, talk about stormwater runoff and non-point pollution, as well as the best management practices for home and work. So as I was saying before my computer went to sleep, Carlos Calderon, Water Programs Manager for the West Michigan Environmental Action Council. Whenever I do an intro slide, I always like to say that I come from the water. I grew up in the Straits of Mackinac, literally surrounded by water. Our community was part of the inland waterways. And then for the last 20 years, I've been based in Grand Rapids, on the banks of the Grand River, and of course, looking to the west and trying to take care of Lake Michigan. I am also an alum of Granite Valley, two-time alum most recently, earned my master's in watershed ecology. And water programs for WMEAC, we do all sorts of things. Anything that water touches really is what I like to tell people. So we have a big hand in the urban policies around stormwater management. We do water quality monitoring with community groups, watershed groups, as well as a variety of education and advocacy. All right, so we're going to go back a little ways in our educations. So the water cycle is kind of the foundation of all life on Earth, really. Is why I always like to bring it up in my presentations about water. Of course, you can see where the water comes from, where it's going, and how it gets back to where it came from, right? This big circle of evaporation, condensation, precipitation, and then either surface runoff or infiltration into the soil in the groundwater system. Of course, the human land use, this is a very natural illustration, but through all of our cities, our agriculture, our industries, everything else that the water interacts with ends up impacting that source, that large body of water, which would be Lake Michigan for us. And this whole area of land that we see the water interacting with is the watershed. So water cycle, watersheds, we're all part of this. We all have a role to play in it. So a little bit more local of a watershed, our White River watershed, you can see it goes all the way up into Newaygo County, parts of Oceana County, and then of course into White Lake and Lake Michigan. Lake Michigan is also part of the Great Lakes Basin watershed. It feeds into Lake Huron, which feeds into Lake Erie, which feeds into Lake Ontario, which goes into the Atlantic Ocean. So you go out and touch Lake Michigan, you're connected to lands and waters far, far away. All right, so again, kind of honing back into White Lake, you see these highlighted, these highlighted properties, you can't really see it, there it is. These highlighted properties along the coast of the lake are all the properties that have septic systems. So potentially, any one of these properties could be contributing some sort of pollution, whether it's sewage or the stormwater runoff, runoff from our lawns and roofs and driveways and parking lots and whatever else, right? So anything on land or in the ground could be getting into the water system here. Stormwater runoff is really important because that's one of the things that we really interact with on a pretty regular basis. We get a lot of rain here and snow in Michigan. I like this graph. It's pretty simple and technical at the same time. But you can see in a natural system, the forested up on the upper left-hand corner, where we don't have any human influence, most of the water is infiltrated, either deeply infiltrated or shallow infiltration. A good portion of it evaporates or is taken up by plants, and a very small amount, only 10%, runs off into surface bodies of water. As we start to see more human influence with the different percentages of imperviousness or hard surfaces, more and more of that is running off. So the water is getting into, the rainwater is getting into surface water faster, and if it's coming into contact with asphalt, blacktop parking lots, it's warmer and fast, and it gets into the water faster. So it's, again, giving the perfect conditions for the algae, the bacteria, and other things that we don't particularly like to interact with when we're fishing, swimming, boating. So we see a lot of chemicals, we see a lot of the debris. The debris is one of those pollutant sources that we don't often think about as being pollution, but it impacts the physical environment that aquatic organisms live in. And then, of course, the nutrients, pesticides, and other small and medium-sized particles, trash, lots of plastics has become a very big issue, especially in Lake Michigan. So how do we, like I said, we're part of this system. How can we play a role in alleviating all of this contamination? So I'd like to highlight some of the